Reverend Chukwuemeka Ezeugo, also known as Reverend King, was indicted for setting 6 of his church members ablaze for alleged immoral acts leading to the death of one Uzoh, after which the Lagos State government charged him to court, where he was found guilty of 5-count charges of attempted murder and 1-count charge of murder. The Lagos State High Court on the 11th of January 2007 sentenced him to 20 years imprisonment each for the 5 counts of attempted murder and death by hanging for the murder of Miss Uzoh.
Hello and welcome back. It's the African Humanist. Let's talk about pastors who kill. And today we've got a pastor. His name is Reverend King. His name that he was given when he was born, Chukwuemeka Ezeugo. And so yeah, he was a church pastor who had a group of members and decided for some reason, he decided to teach his members a lesson. He decided to I don't know what he was trying to do, but it looks like people had said some of his members were committing fornication or adultery, I don't know which one, and he decided to punish them for committing the act of fornication, adultery, and he decides to set his members ablaze, on fire. Unfortunately for him, Uzoh, one of the members, she died. And it looks like in her case, they said she was caught in the act of fornication. My thing is, what right does any pastor, bishop, reverend, priest, at what point do you give someone so much power over your life? And even after it, I don't think he expected anybody to die. I think he just expected, because apparently he'd been beating these people, beating his members, he'd been, and come time for the trial, this man showed no remorse, none whatsoever. And he even appealed. He was sentenced to death. He's still not died till now, because he hasn't been killed yet, but he was sentenced to death, and his lawyers decided to appeal the decision. Yeah? No remorse whatsoever. None. Anyway, watch the following video. I'll be back.
In 2006, Reverend King was convicted by Justice Joseph Oyewole of Lagos High Court and sentenced to death by hanging on January 11, 2007 for the alleged murder of a church member, Uzoh. He allegedly poured petrol on the deceased for what he called acts of fornication and set her ablaze alongside others. The victim eventually died as a result of injuries sustained from the burns.
Supporters of Reverend Chukwuemeka Ezeugo, also known as Reverend King, waiting anxiously for the Supreme Court panel to deliver its judgment on the appeal filed by him, challenging the death sentence handed down to him by a Lagos High Court. Soon after the 5-man panel headed by Justice Mahmood Galadima arrived at the court, they gave their verdict. In the late judgment delivered by Justice Sylvester Ungucha and unanimously endorsed by the 5-man panel, the court upheld the death sentence handed down to Reverend King by the Lagos State High Court and affirmed by the Lagos Division of the Appeal Court.
The Praying Assembly is a popular church in Uzoh Estate area of Lagos. The church, overseen by convicted Reverend Emeka Ezeugo, alias Reverend King, is known for notoriety. While in prison, the goatee-bearded convict was reported to have control over the minds of his followers. His male worshippers wear their beards like his. The condemned prisoner, who had been awaiting the hangman in Kuje prisons in Abuja since he was transferred from Lagos prisons, was allegedly sleeping with his female worshippers and meting out grievous punishment.
So, you saw those clips of Reverend King. He showed no remorse whatsoever, none at all, none for his victim, none for the church members. And this is the reason why I decided to come and speak about this particular case, because pastors can have so much control over the lives of members. I mean, look at the case of Jim Jones. In the name of holiness and preaching heaven and preaching purity and, the gateway to the afterlife, people leave, they just put all their lives, their hand, their everything into the lives of the leaders, the pastors, and they don't even stop to think for 1 second that this man might do something bad to us, might do something. They just feel like, okay, we can see no wrong, he can do no wrong to us, and let's just follow. And this is why I have to keep on speaking, because at what point you say, my pastor, my leader, I'll keep on going to that church? At what point do you say, okay, this is control, this is controlling, this is abusive? Because this man was simply running a cult. And let me show you proof why I would categorically tell you it was a cult. Even after a member of their church had been burnt alive by this man, burned to death, they still followed him all the way to court, every step of the way. And apparently he was still running church while inside jail. He was still running the church. Apparently past the politicians will go and see him for prayers. His members, apparently he was still sleeping with members while in prison. Watch this next video.
While in prison, the goatee-bearded convict was reported to have control over the minds of his followers. His male worshippers wear their beards like his. The condemned prisoner, who had been awaiting the hangman in Kuje prisons in Abuja since he was transferred from Lagos prisons, was allegedly sleeping with his female worshippers and meting out grievous punishment on those he considered sinners. Both male and female members of Reverend King's assembly are said to have changed their surnames to King as a sign of loyalty. He is seen as Christ and honored as God by his followers, who believe he could never be found guilty of the charges leveled against him. Now that the tone of the music has changed, what is next for Reverend King's followers and the ministry? Your guess is as good as mine.
You see, his members changed their surnames to this man's name, King. Not only that, this man had to be transferred from Lagos to Abuja because his members were still going into the jail. He was still able to sleep with his members, and he had, preferential treatment at this jail. But the thing is, why is it okay for your pastors to sleep with members of the church, but when the members of the church are sleeping with other people, he decides to punish them for, according to him, fornication? Don't you think there's something wrong? And this is how I know this man is nothing but a narcissist. He wouldn't let the ladies go and sleep with people who they want to sleep with, but it's okay for him to sleep with them. And these people change their, you see, it's just a cult, because they changed their name to his own name. It's just incredible.
Oyewole of the Lagos High Court. The 6-count charge was made up of 5 charges of attempted murder and 1 charge of murder. Reverend King pleaded not guilty. These are the faces of some of his members in court. You can tell some of them by their long beards, similar to that of their reverend. Some wear his picture, and yet others, like the late Anne, abandoned their last names and took the name King as a surname.
You must believe in him, or you perish.
It's this same slavish devotion that has kept them hopeful that the court will eventually free their prophet, despite the death of one of their members of supposed improper sexual relations among the victims. On the 22nd of July 2006, at about 8 p.m., the Reverend summoned all the alleged fornicators and proceeded to beat a confession out of them. Some of them testified that they confessed just to avoid the wrath of the GO, the General Overseer, the Very Reverend King. Enraged by their confession, he proceeded to assault them, hitting them with rods, before summoning another devotee to fetch and drench them with petrol, after which he lit a match. Reverend King joined 8 others to testify in his defense, and even though he denied committing the offense, the court felt he did not show any remorse in the witness box. His answers to the event of the night of the incident was described by the court as evasive, coy, and sly. Indeed, he was caught off guard and boxed into a corner a few moments, and evaded certain questions on the ground that he had a spiritual injunction to forget his past.
Did you hear that? This man said he has a spiritual injunction to forget his past. Really? After killing somebody, you have the spiritual conviction to forget your past? Really? Whew. He admitted that he regularly beats his members when they erred. He said he flogs them when they err. What right has any pastor got to do this? What right has any reverend got to do this? It's just, this is a Jim Jones, only just one person died. This is Jim Jones. And a lot of people are in Jim Jones scenarios in their churches.
In the end, Justice Olubunmi Oyewole rejected his account of the incident. The court held that he was filled with lies and fabrications to save his skin, when the enormity of his action and the attendant consequences dawned on him. Reverend King was convicted and sentenced to death.
Good for him that he was sentenced to death. I mean, good. And even his appeal was, thrown out. But why I'm doing this video is, if you are in a church where your pastor has so much control over you, you might just be in another Jim Jones, Reverend King scenario. This is what religion can do, because people think we're following this man and they will lead us to the way to heaven. But right here on earth, no one, absolutely no one, has that power, that authority, that right to beat you for your belief, to kill you for your belief, or to maltreat you, or to put you down, call you names, attack you, simply because you need to follow, simply because you share a belief. religion is toxic and poisonous. And you can see his members. Did you see his members? These people look poor. These are the kind of people that would take all their money and give to the pastor. And yet, he would treat them like they're nobodies. It's sad when I see things like this. Some people would say, oh, but my pastor is nice. Oh, but my pastor, he doesn't treat me that way. Oh, my pastor, he doesn't. Until something bad happens. Then we hear all about it. So, all I'm just saying is, be careful. Whatever religious organization you're in, I'm not in any, because I'm not in any religious organization, because I see that religion, all of them put together, is not something that I want to be associated with. And so, as the African humanist, I'm saying, please be careful out there. Don't let your case become as a Reverend King or a Jim Jones or whatever. Please be careful. Nobody needs to lose their life because of their belief or lack of a belief. Thank you very much. I'm the African Humanist. I'll be back. And please don't forget to like, to share, to subscribe. Please do so. Thank you and see you soon.